Uh,
So it is going to YouTube. Okay, you're renamed Fleming.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are we ready to start?
Okay. Well, inshallah, after so much technical difficulties, by the grace of Allah, let's start off with a word of thanks and and making sure dua, inshallah. That's okay with everyone.
That sounds good to me.
All right, then. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge in Almighty God from the accused devil and influence in my life. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. With the name of Almighty God, most gracious, most merciful, all praise is due to God and God alone, most gracious, most merciful, master of all the systems of knowledge. Thee do we worship and thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way, the way of those upon whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, those whose portion is not wrath, and who go not astray. Amen.
I mean, I'm doing that.
Well, peace and blessings to everyone listening and hosts, etc., and all those on the air, of course. Welcome to MAP5, Muslim American Power 5. We usually start our program with a very enlightening introduction from our Honorable Cheryl Sudduth. So we're going to allow her to open up her own unique way, if that's okay with her, as we start this June 9th, 2025 session of MAP5. Sister Cheryl?
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak.
In this year of the 160th year from 1865, I want to say, as we approach 160th, Juneteenth.
Juneteenth, yes.
What has you that's the question. What has you so in the words of the great philosopher Tupac Amari Shakur, the great philosopher from our generation, Brother Ishmael. In LA, we riot, we don't rally, live and die. And what he said? That's what he said.
Mm.
I'm gonna start you off with that one. So, President said that LA is out of control. So I'm asking for a friend. I'm asking for a friend that LA is out of control. We need the National Guard because people are sitting down, locking arms. Now, there's a few hoodlums. I'll acknowledge that. But for the greater part, they're sitting down in the streets, locking arms, and they're saying that they don't want police and ICE taking people off the streets. So LA is out of control. But the people who were, same president, was hiding up in the White House eating McDonald's French fries and Big Macs when people was running through the streets of DC, I don't know, climbing all over the national monuments in the White House, crashing through windows and bashing in the heads of White House police. But they were, peacefully protesting. Can somebody hear me out? Help me understand the difference. I'm just asking for a friend. I, of course, understand, but I'm just asking for a couple of friends of mine. Can you explain? Number one. Number two, what has you woohoo whoop like well, in the other great philosopher, I think he's in the baby boomer generation, the one in front of me. Great philosopher. Woohoo! That was his call to arms. That would be the dog pound, Arsenio Hall. I can't even keep a straight face on that one.
I was trying to think of who you talking about. Okay. Okay.
Great philosopher Arsenio Hall. What has you woohoo giving the dog pound salute? It's
Wow.
So what has you trying to do the math on the riot, not rally? And what has you doing the dog pound salute? Way to go. It might be the same thing, because for me, same thing. Same thing. Because right now, sending out the National Guard, all of a sudden, it's not just LA. Sacramento, Fresno, San Francisco, they all have some stuff planned for them today. Can't get them all. That's what they said. Said, can't get us all. And now Seattle, Portland, Twin Cities, Atlanta, Chicago, New York. Can't get them all. I didn't eat today, but I'm gonna pretend like I did. I don't eat McDonald's, but I'm gonna sit back and pretend like I was him on the inauguration day, and I'm gonna sit back with a cup like this. What's happening? Interesting. Okay. They all good people. Good people. Exercising their rights. What say you?
Wow.
What say you, madam, sir? So, madam, you go first since he's hosting today.
Goodness. Uh, okay. What has me going is, they say you keep on trying the same thing, you're getting the same result. And you're not happy with that result, that's insanity. So he did it with a little different twist, but this immigration ban, juxtaposed to the special refugee program for Afrikaners. you know, that Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, they got some serious mental issues. So I'll just put it that way. Now, the dog pound salute. Yours sounded like a little chihuahua with the, he was more woo, 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 if I
Yeah,
remember.
I got a little voice. I got a little voice. I'm gonna have to find some. I'm gonna have to find some sound
Oh
effects.
man.
So what has me
I
doing
got you. I
that?
got your back. I got your back.
What has me doing that? Um, I had something earlier and it went totally out of my mind with your dramatic representation. Cheryl just went, shoo. Okay, what has me doing? I have on this scarf, turquoise, and I deliberately put it on. Doesn't match the rest of the outfit, but gives it maybe a little pop because it reminds me of a wedding that I was a bridesmaid in Hamilton, Bermuda, for
Mhm.
Natura and her husband um, in Hamilton, Bermuda. And the water in Bermuda is beautiful. The beaches in Bermuda are beautiful. Um, and it was in Bermuda that I really learned the power of water in the ocean. I may have told this story before. I learned to swim in the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, off of Staten Island. I went to a camp, a summer camp there. I guess probably when I was 7, 8, 9, maybe those 3 years. And um, every year after the first year, I would see that the lifeguard that they had there looked like he was like 90 years old. He would lure
Wow.
children out on the pier where he had his little chair, and then after a little while, push them in the water. And so you had to either sink or swim. And so by the third year, I kind of knew what the program was. And when I got lured onto that pier, I knew what to expect. So that's how I learned how to swim. So I never really had a fear of swimming in the ocean. And when I would see movies where people would start flailing and, just act like there was no recourse but to drown, I was just like, oh, they're crazy. The water's not like that compared to a pool that we would swim at in the city. But for not this wedding, but another wedding that I went to in Bermuda, um, yes, I was always a bridesmaid and never a bride. Um, the maybe it was 2 days before the wedding, I went swimming in the water again. And the bride, she said, now be careful because the undertow is strong today. And I'm like, I learned how to swim in the Atlantic. What is this? Blah, blah, blah. I learned the power of water that day when that undertow caught me and slammed me up against a rock. Um, and my first thing was, oh Allah. I had
Mm.
enough sense to say, oh Allah, please get me out
Mm,
of
mm,
this.
mm, mm, mm,
So the
mm,
beauty of water and the beautiful times that I had in Bermuda, I decided to wear this to remind me of the beautiful turquoise
mm,
water
mm,
of Bermuda and the pink sands. Yes, the sands are pink. That's
mm,
it.
mm, mm, mm.
So watch out
Wow.
for the undertow.
Well, I'm gonna do the historical piece first, and I'm gonna talk about Bermuda second. So I was down there for the Time to Be Grateful,
Ah,
sponsored by, Muslim Jonah some years ago. In fact,
uh-huh.
Cassandra and I was celebrating our, I think we were turning 60 that year. It's been a little while back there. Anyway, let me go with the first one first, though. I thought about this guy named GW who stood in Alabama and said, segregation today, segregation forever. I'm talking about George Wallace. This is 1965 when National Guards were actually sent there to escort those students because they were protecting them and their rights to attend school, to integrate the school system, of course. And this is 1965 now. Here we have number 47 sending National Guards into a city not invited by the mayor nor the governor, just in his own mind, he thinks he has the right to do so because of his insane intoxication with power. And so we're seeing almost just the opposite. He's sending people there to escalate a situation that could very easily be solved by the local authorities because they have the culture of the people in hand. And they could, of course, take necessary steps to put those who are really breaking the law where they should be, but not to escalate the situation like he has done. And you think about what happened when I called the Planet of the Apes attack on the White House. People crawling in that building. I went up there shortly after that. The back of the White House, not the White House, pardon me, the Capitol building was still, glass was broken. They were still repairing windows. And if you remember that situation, people actually looked like they were mentally deranged, you know. And then they went inside that building and did all kind of foul things on people's desks, in the hallways, etc. And you have the nerve to exercise a pardon against people like that, yet you have the gall to send people into a city that you claim is out of control because it happens to be from a different party. And you want to escalate differences between party versus solving problems. You're creating a problem. There's a lot more I can say about that, but it's just the epitome of insanity. And I hope that people are aware that congressional seats will be available very soon. Don't make excuses for not voting. Get out there and vote and make a difference. Some of these people just have to go, plain and simple. Um, on the other side of the coin, during the Eid celebration, we actually celebrated my mother-in-law's 98th birthday here. And we had people to come from as far as South Africa. My oldest daughter, who goes to school in LA, my granddaughter actually, came back from her trip from South Africa, coincidentally the day before. So she came down here, of course, to be with her great-grandmother. And of course, all my children came with their grandchildren, et cetera. We ended up with about 60 people there. And of course, my, very distinguished mother-in-law came in dressed in pink from head to toe. She didn't bring her little green scarf because she is an AKA, she's, to the core, AKA. But she was so happy. And usually we start those kind of events off, we all get in a circle. And usually I honor the oldest person to lead in prayer. And she said, no, bruh, which is my nickname. I'm the honoree. You say the prayer. So I said, all right then, Mama, I'll do what I can do. But we had a wonderful time there, thanking Almighty God for bringing us all together in that kind of capacity to celebrate. And then the day before that, I was down in Raleigh with my grandson's graduation, one of them out of high school from Northwood, high school down there. That was a big celebration. So during the Eid celebration this year, I was actually involved in either birthday celebrations or graduation celebrations. And so the spirit of Eid sort of was very much in my heart. And so that's what sort of got me uplifted, substantially, that we do in the midst of all of this absolute insanity from the political arena, we can celebrate Eid and thank Almighty God Allah and celebrate those returning from that huge journey to Mecca, celebrating, the will of Almighty God to raise him up above everything else we do in our life because indeed he is the greatest. Uh, that is my 2 cents for the beginning of our program for today.
You, sir. Let's also remember that besides the congressional seats, we can also oppose some of the judgeships that are coming up.
Yes.
That people forget that you vote on judges. And many judges are coming up in 26. And in some states, they are aligning, especially in California, they are aligning your sheriff's departments with the presidential election. So even though you just elected some of your sheriffs in 24, they've pushed them from, or in 22, they've pushed them from 26 to 28. So just be aware when your sheriffs, especially if your sheriffs are aligning themselves with policies that you don't believe in, be ready for that or look for some candidates and run against them. And the last thing I want to say is this new, they're not calling it a Muslim ban, but look at the countries.
Yes.
Look at the countries. And so, and they've made it where people who are outside the country on vacation or whatever aren't going to be able to get back in.
Right.
So it's almost a retro ban. So some of these people are stuck. And some of them are on, green cards or temporary work permits or students or things like of that nature. And that is abhorrible. That's not something that this country has ever done, and it's done very purposeful. So if you if you're listening to this and you, for whatever reason, didn't vote or voted whatever, or are agnostic about the voting process, I want you to look at this. When you didn't think your vote mattered, or you voted one issue or something else, I want you to think about this, because everyone's being harmed by these policies. This month is, in addition to celebrating Juneteenth next week, this month is Caribbean American Heritage Month, June. And many of those countries in the Caribbean, in addition to, Puerto Rico and Cuba and as many Latino countries, is Haiti and Jamaica and Bahamas. But most of those countries in the Caribbean proper, are steeped from the African diaspora. And just last week, at the end of last week, these United States sent ICE to those Caribbean islands. And in Puerto Rico, there was a huge ICE raid. And Puerto Rico, as you may know, is a United States territory. The American Virgin Islands is an American territory, but they sent ICE to the Virgin Islands, to Puerto Rico, especially Puerto Rico. I'm bringing attention to that one because, as you know, it's family. Is my isla, but they sent them there to arrest, to detain and deport Dominicanos. La Dominica in Haiti, they occupy an island, but a lot of Dominicans go to Puerto Rico. And even though Puerto Rico is the poorest territory for the United States, it's the bottom of our poverty matrix, but they were deporting them. And even though there were a lot of darker skinned Puerto Ricans, Dominicans have, the features are a little different. And even though it's Spanish, there's some words that are a little different, so sometimes you tend to stand out. And so I was listening to this lady on NPR. She was saying that she is Dominicana, but she has her American citizenship. She said Americanized, meaning she's been
Naturalized citizen.
naturalized. Yeah, naturalized. She didn't say naturalized though, which I found was funny. She said Americanized citizenship. And she said that she's been telling some of her family and friends from La Dominica to don't wear your hair in these kind of braids, right? Don't say certain words. Don't try and stick out. She said, I hate to say it like this, but this is survival techniques because ICE is coming. And it's hard to say that even in the United States. It's hard to tell people this, but right now this is more of survival techniques, right? But people not understanding that, especially in the Caribbean and on the islands, that you have ICE going and taking, hundreds of thousand people from this little island and sending them there, sending them, back to Dominica. Because if you go from Dominica to Puerto Rico, and then you can go from Puerto Rico to like Florida or New York easily, and that's what they're trying to prevent. Because here in the United States, there's a propaganda machine that says that the only people, they don't look like Black people. And Black people are really have bought into it. When you listen to, especially New York and Chicago, it was a huge thing during the elections that will take them because you think only people they're talking about, people south of the border, like Mexican or even from Asian countries or sometimes even from African countries. No, they look like us. They look like us. And they sometimes they may be your relatives too. There's a lot of us who have Caribbean heritage, and there's a lot of us who have Caribbean. You just spoke about Bermuda, Sister Amatullah, right? And there's a lot of us who have Bermudese or Virgin Island or, you know,
Mama,
Bahamian or
Yes,
just a lot of Caribbean, a lot of our family. They went through the islands before they came to the United States. Those
exactly,
slave ships
exactly.
didn't just
Yes,
come to
yes,
the United States. And so I just caution us from having this apathetic view of immigration. And some of us are just, we're just being apathetic and not knowing that these orders for not just ICE, but these closing the borders and what is it again? I've banned the country banned
banning the countries. Yes, the 12 countries
banning
plus.
countries, and especially as Muslims, right? But just banning people whole cloth because you don't like a country, but then you're letting people from South Africa.
Yes,
Not everybody from South Africa, by the way.
Afrikaners,
yeah, Afrikaners,
Afrikaners,
the
Afrikaners.
yes, the apartheid gurus who benefited from taking their land and imprisoning people in their own land, not to even participate in the voting process, not to mention forcing them into unimaginable ghettos. As I said earlier, my granddaughter just came from there, spending 10 days down there. And I have a daughter-in-law who's DR, Dominican Republican, my oldest son married. And so I have a granddaughter who is from, well, I'll pause right there. There's a lot more that I can say about that, but it's insane not to think that whatever this 47 is doing is not in some context impacting your family or someone you know every day. It's not coincidental. And you cannot tell any thinking person that you can allow Africaners to come to this country with an open arm and ban people in all the Middle East and North Africa, etc., and say you don't have a racial issue. Oh, I'm going to say a kindergarten mentality about people. Uh, and you can imagine what I'm talking about when I say kindergarten. And that's where he's at. And all those who identify with that person called 47. We have so much
Thank
to
you.
talk about. So
Me
let's
too.
shift if
Me
we
too.
could.
Me
And it
too.
sort of fits
I just want to just say that we cannot be people of conscientiousness and dismiss some of these things. So
precisely,
thank you,
precisely.
sir.
Thank you very much. And I must add to that, I was listening this morning to, like I do every day, a lecture from Imam Warthy Muhammad, and he was talking about the exact same thing. We have to have an open heart for people, wherever they may be suffering, if we call ourselves Muslims. We cannot close our heart off to people suffering. And that really, really applies critically today. So, brothers and sisters, was again want to thank you for joining us today. Our theme for today actually is culture preservation through civic engagement. So it fits right into our conversation today on what's really going on in the world. I happen to serve on the Juneteenth committee here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, for a number of years. And this year we have a 3-day celebration. And we have an outstanding band this year performing called Earth, Wind, and Fire. Some of you
Oh,
around my age may be familiar with that group. And
okay.
so they're gonna, and usually I do the libation and kick things off, etc. We have a huge participation. We can have at Bailey Park and the downtown uh, biotech center, sometimes 4,000 people plus that will pass through during the course of the day. We have a number of workshops, a number of presenters, a number of cultural expressions, educational workshops, book presenters, or new authors, etc., and a lot of things engaging just children in the process. So, 106 years later, we're celebrating Juneteenth, and many of us know that the community out in Galveston, Texas, didn't get the word they even had been given the idea of freedom until 2 years after the executive order was given. So we celebrate that, and we honor our sister who single-handedly walked to get Juneteenth recognized, as a holiday for the country, and we want to celebrate her as well. And we also happen to have here in Winston-Salem the oldest church called St. Philip's and Raven Church that the former slaves actually established, where the colonel came down to make the announcement to read, in fact, the Emancipation Proclamation to the congregants there. And so that sort of kicks off the year that we celebrate from that location. Then it goes downtown, et cetera. But it's a huge celebration here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so our theme for this year is 106 years later, still praising. 160 years later, still praising. So we look forward to that officially on the 20th. I've been asked to participate in a panel discussion on the 19th, but we're going to, lift up our struggle for freedom. And what are we doing today to hold on to our unique cultural experience and pass it forward to our great-grandchildren and grandchildren as we celebrate 160 years later? Inshallah, that's the focus. And I've invited a young lady, her name is Bria Armstrong, who we hired this year as our executive director for a group called Tricultural Awareness. We finally got enough money to hire someone through grants, et cetera. But for years, we've been doing it as most of us do, these private entities or nonprofits through volunteer efforts. But we were able to get a grant to hire a brand new sister, young mind, plenty of energy to lead the Tricultural Awareness Group. And I hope and pray that she'll be on. She just recently came back from Africa. We sort of miss each other in Ghana, but she's very much in tune with cultural sensitivities and is well respected in the community as an upcoming young leader in the city. So inshallah, she'll be able to join us later on in the program. And we have another young man who does a cultural event called One Love Festival, based on, of course, what happened with Bob Marley. And it's beyond that, too. He does a series of workshops, too. But the whole name of the presentation that he presents is called One Love Festival. And this is his 5th year engaged in that. And his name is Derek Young. He'll be coming on later on in the program because he had a commitment early on. And then we've also extended an invitation to a young man who has a program he does every year, giving out 7 scholarships to young people who want to pursue their education into artistic development and or technology issues, because that's his field of endeavor. And that is Brother Scott Abdul Salam. And we hope that he'll be able to join us as well this afternoon. But our cultural preservation, very important thing to think about, because many people want us to think that we have no culture roots, but we do. We have a unique cultural experience in this country. Even though many of us will go to Africa, will visit a country, will identify with some of the things going on there, but our original identity as a group in this country is very unique from the sad experience of chattel slavery. And that sort of gives us a common bond with each other. Though we may go to Africa and identify with our historical roots, that experience being chattel slaves, unfortunately, after our sister mentioned that many of us, of course, were put through a process in the Caribbean islands called factoring. That's what they actually called it, to make those people on slave ships think indeed that they were supposed to be subjected to another human being in the way of a chattel slave. But they would subjected to that in the Caribbean islands, and then sent from there, a lot of them over to Brazil, the majority, in fact. And of course, some came up to what's called North America today. And of course, that's our roots from that generation of people who were indeed subjected to that inhumane treatment of chattel slavery. And again, it emphasizes also our need to always be sensitive to suffering people, because we've uniquely had that experience. No one else can claim that they were dehumanized to the degree that we were. And look at us today, brothers and sisters. By grace and mercy, we didn't come out carrying machetes, double-barrel shotguns, machine guns, trying to get even. A lot of us came out with a human structure and a human mindset to improve humanity. And all of us sharpened those skills under the leadership of people like W.B. Du Bois or Noble Drew Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Imam Warathuddin Muhammad, Malcolm X, etc. But we had leaders who came out of that bad experience, directing us to keep on marching forward toward the benefits of freedom. Dr. King, etc. Our sheroes, Mary McLeod Bethune, etc. So we can name heroines and heroes who, even though they went through that kind of suffering in their genetic makeup, they were able to put a human face in their existence and made a tremendous contribution to improving the quality of life in this country called the United States of America. So I'm looking forward to our guests joining us, and we're going to allow our people to make their comments as well, toward the end of the program. And I want to get my co-hosts involved too on this idea of why is cultural preservation so important for our generation? Why is cultural preservation so important to our generation? And I'm going to sort of kick it off because I've just come back from looking at more young people than old people in our celebration of my mother-in-law's 98th birthday. I called it, I looked at that and I said, my God, they've outnumbered us now. There's a little playground right beside. We had the park at, the shelter. And there were, I think it was 31 of them playing on the swings, etc. We only had 29. So I said, oh boy, this thing is shifting. They had all the energy over there and having a very good time, but the idea of us being sensitive, of passing on to them a direction that they hopefully will inherit to improve the quality of their lives with this concept that we call freedom movement. How would they be able to express that and benefit from that? And how would they pass it on to the next generation beyond them? What is it in our culture that they should hold on to hold on to their humanity going forward and not become like that regime we have now in the White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? So, culture preservation, why is it so important? Let me give my co-host a chance to respond to that, and then we'll let others make the response, and hopefully we'll have our guests to be. I told them to come on about 1:30 or so, and I know we came on late, but we'll give them a chance to come on when they identify themselves, inshallah. Who would like to go first? Why is culture preservation so important today in 2025? And
Well,
I'll give you a frame
years
reference.
ago,
Go ahead, Sister.
oh, go ahead.
I apologize.
No,
No,
you
go
go
right
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was just going to say that
Uh,
just keep in mind that we're more than just a culture. We're multicultural in many respects, even within your own family. And there's plenty of evidence of that
yes.
available. Yes. All right.
Years ago, my husband got a book and I read it also. It was called Cultural Bandits.
Mm,
And then maybe about 5 years afterwards, in the law school, there was one professor that I worked with, and she dealt with the arts and culture and whatnot, and this terminology of cultural appropriation
mm,
started to be discussed on, in the law school and on the campus also. And so when you ask that question in terms of cultural preservation, that's the counterbalance to this cultural appropriation. And that was
mm,
kind of the theme that this brother, I think he's passed away. He was in Baltimore. It was either Baltimore or Philly. I'm going to look in the bookcase because I saw the book the other day. Um, and it was a grassroots independent publication. I don't even know how my husband became aware of the book. Um, I see that that is the thing that happened very dramatically to point to something that people can readily identify with hip hop.
mm,
Um, how the message was appropriated and turned into a weapon where it began to uplift people, the enemies in the record companies um, and their supporters, turned that to become a weapon to enslave our future generations more. So here you had something that started out with the language that was used, with the dress, all of these things are aspects of culture. Um, and it was turned around, switched around, instead of being something to uplift and make people politically aware or culturally aware or socially aware. Um, it became a, a genre, a musical expression to tear down. And um, also, with that, at the time, there was a movement by African American women condemning the language that was used in the rap, and I just reflect on how they tried to warn us and how they were just beat down. It was a movement that was spearheaded by the National Negro Women's Association, I believe. This sister's name I always blank on. I see her face, I see her hat. She always wore these hats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they
Oh
were
boy.
just, demonized almost.
Mm-hmm.
And it also sparked this kind of generation um, tearing asunder. Pitting the older generation with the
Yes,
youth,
yeah.
which I don't think we have even gotten over till today. I think we still have remnants of that in the trauma of all of that. I think of Will Smith had a rap that was supposed to be a funny kind of thing. Parents just don't understand. I don't know. I might be dating myself with that one. Um, and I think all of that uh, has has left a mark on our culture that we're still trying to um, recover from. I think that reflects I think that reflects our historical trauma and the modern trauma that um, the record and entertainment industry, out of their greed and their commercialization, they saw this genre as one that could make millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars, actually, not just here in this country, but worldwide. And it has done that. It has done
Yeah.
that. Um, and I think that's unfortunate. And I think if you look at the culture of our music, hip hop wasn't the first iteration um, of rapping. You had back in, I guess, maybe the 30s and 40s, people like Louis Jordan who did rapping in his musical expression. It wasn't like South Bronx rapping, but it was rapping nonetheless. And I think unless you are someone who studied this development, and I think evolution is a big part of culture also. You don't want the culture to remain stagnant. It is going to evolve as people evolve, as society evolves, as the issues that we're confronted with, the culture is going to evolve, you know. But then I think sometimes there's a tension there in that evolving. And unless there is mutual respect and appreciation, um, the culture, rather than building up and fortifying the society, will work to tear down the society. That's just kind of my first take on your question.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. It's so important that we put the narrative in a historical perspective and also update it as well. Um, if you back to the methodology used during the chattel slavery insanity we had in this country, the man who came to James River in Virginia to teach slave owners how to maintain control of the slaves, the psychology that he used there, dividing us based on size of your nose, skin complexion, etc. The house so-called enslaved person versus the field slave person, distinguishing differences of physical features to make one group feel lesser than the other, to conquer and divide. That was the whole premise of it. I usually have my students read that document and do some research behind it, and then compare that to Nature Knows No Color Line that J. Rogers wrote, and then compare those two to W. Du Bois's that he wrote back in 2000.
I don't know what what happened?
Okay, here we go. Okay. Um, and so just to give them some historical perspective, and I would always encourage them also to answer the simple question, why was it that after chattel slavery ended, during what's called the Reconstruction era, men of our freedom leaders then focused in on academic excellence and established institutions, colleges, in a very short period of time with very little resources? And you have today in North Carolina the highest number of HBCUs still in existence in the country. But the foundation of those institutions goes back to the 1860s. And in many cases, and the people struggled to establish them. Later on, of course, philanthropies got involved, but that was not the initial development. It was nickels and dimes and people struggling, but they saw as a vision collectively the importance of education. And they used that energy to establish a number of institutions, going forward. Um, of course, you have political leaders like A. Philip Randolph, who inherited a movement of his own with the Sleepers, excuse me, a union group that worked on the rail lines. The average person didn't have the kind of exposure in our community. And so just think about what they did with that vision of the importance of education to establish institutions. You can include faith institutions too. They built wooden churches, many of them. And many of these institutions today that have a religious foundation started off very humbly, but they had a vision of where they wanted to go in the future. Sadly, the movement went from an academic focus into, during the 60s, of course, a political focus. And during that era, you know, with the exception of people like the Last Poets, who really had a very positive message, Leroy Jones, who became Amir Baraka, they had a very positive message, in the rapping sessions. And we had a few more like that. But that was considered community rapping, with a positive message behind it. And I'll bring it forward. One of my former students, the Ninth Wonder, he tries to promote positive rappers even today with a positive message. His legal name is Patrick Douthit, but he's determined that he's going to make a difference in some of this rap narrative and make it more of a positive impression. And I will address this idea of them using division between families, male over female, children versus, parents, that whole thing, of divide and conquer with the narrative behind it to justify that kind of behavior. In reality, it's a family. Some are blessed to be a little older, some are blessed to be just starting off with younger, but we're all one family when it really boils down to it. So we have to be aware of those elements that try to divide us and set us against each other, because it only benefits those who have no interest in our progress going forward. Uh, all right, so Cheryl, I'm going to let you, if you would like to make a comment on why it's so necessary for us to maintain and preserve our culture. The floor is yours. Culture preservation. Why is it important?
So, yesterday, I I emceed an event for an organization that was started a few years ago after the 2020 election cycle. It's actually during
COVID?
my congressional campaign back in 2022. We were coming out of COVID, remember? And it was that in and out kind of phase. And the organization is called Building Black Political Power. And the tagline for the event is just that. It was preservation of Black history in America's history. And so this is timely, this discussion. And part of that discussion yesterday was this exact look at the importance of preserving, Black history, Black culture. And I mean, we have like the basic, right? We need to preserve it, the struggle of the ancestors and how we uphold traditions and that connection with with our past can help us figure out how we go in the future and all of those tropes. I think that's, for me, it's that uh, the history and the culture is important, but the why is more important. And I think that a lot of times what happens is, and I've watched it in my own life and family, and with my own siblings, is when we were growing up, and some of you may even know this, even experience it yourself, either in your families or you know people like this. Growing up, I'm number four of six, seven when my other stepsister, my stepfather's oldest daughter is in town. And I had this thirst for knowledge. I always wanted to know everything. I wanted to know, you know, who I am, what I'm about. I wanted to learn everything. I wanted to learn about, so I would sit at my grandmother's feet, and I wanted to hear the stories. I wanted to hear, the French speaking, the German speaking. I wanted to hear patois. I wanted to hear everything. I learned Spanish as a child. I learned all the languages. My siblings, not so much. They didn't care. They were like, I don't want to hear all that. They want to run in the streets. They wanted to go play. And then as we got older, there was this kind of regret with not learning it. And as my brothers went off to service and everybody went to college, and I remember my brother when he was in Italy, he was stationed in Italy. And he called me and he said, dang, I wish I would have done what you did and learned the languages. And my other brother, when he was overseas, I wish, it was very consistent. I wish I would have. My sister, she married an Italian guy. I wish I would have. So as we grew older, it was, looking back, I wish I would have. And it wasn't just the Black history, it was the Creole history. It was the part that was French or German. It was the whole history of what makes our family what it is. So I think that preserving not only, because Black history is not monolithic. Our culture is so vast and it's so rich, and it's who makes us who we are. It is important that if we're going to honor our struggle, and we're going to honor our ancestors, sometimes we are so quick to get away from it, to run away from it, to want to assimilate so quickly, to get out of the neighborhoods, right? To run to the hills, to run to the suburbs, to put our children in the private schools where they can learn to speak the perfect English. I did it. Do you know how I remember growing up, my mother would say when we were speaking, if you did not speak it perfectly, it was like she didn't hear you. And so I spent a lot of time. I learned to read before I was 2. I mean, reading full books. I was talking to my brother about this last Friday. Part of it was I inherited my mother's genius genes. But the other part of it was I had 3 siblings in front of me. And so everybody thought, oh, this little genius, probably. But more likely, I learned it from the 3 in front of me, right? Nobody gives them credit because she would make them read to me. Or they were reading and I was taking their homework and I was figuring it out. And, the good part is that I learned fast, but, I think that connection and knowing that in that strong sense, and then I would sit with my grandmother, my aunts, they thought it was so cute. The little one, she wants to read. Okay, give her something to read. They all wanted to play, where I wanted to read, I wanted to learn, and I would look at the pictures that my grandmother's album and who is this, and tell me about her, and tell me about this one, and tell me. That is on us to give them those experiences. So I take my children and I take them on trips, and I used to take them to the museums, all of the museums, not just the Black museums, but I purposely take them to the Black museums along with the other museums. I take them everywhere. I remember my son, he loved baseball. So when he was a little boy, I took him to Kansas City. And you know, if you don't know Kansas City, I would tell you guys to take him because that's where the Black, everybody knows Ohio because baseball museum. But Kansas City is where you will find the Black baseball museum.
Right. Right.
And so I took him there first before he went to the Major League Baseball. We took him so he could see Black baseball players. He could see himself. We took him to a Caribbean where you can see the Caribbean baseball players. So it's a big thing to have culture. So they went to, yes, they went to the masjids when they were small, but I took him where I grew up. I took him to the church where I grew up with my mom, and he could feel the culture, and they could feel, this is how I grew up. This is why I have a strong connection to faith. Yes, it's a Christian church, but my faith is strong. My faith in God is strong. This is where I sat when I was a little girl. This is where I went to school. This is the playground I played in. This is where we eat dinner every night as a family. Those traditions of every summer we come together as a family, you know, it could be 100 of us, and we read and we have, you know, cookouts and they play dominoes and all of those things, right? And in my family, it is sinful for your child to be double digits and don't know how to play bid whist and dominoes and I mean, they talk about you bad if your child can't play some of the, you know, they can't play Uno in some of those board games, period, any kind of board game, right? Um, and Black literature. My children each had a bookcase. We had one in the hallway, but each of them had their own bookcases, and they had Goodnight Moon, but they all had Harriet Tubman's adventure. So they had Black books. So it's not just about, you know, it wasn't just the cookouts, it was passing down the stories, the griot stories, right? He's taking them to, because they're also Native American. I remember my father-in-law before he passed, we used to go to Berkeley. And Sister Amatullah, you know that you would know these, right? In Berkeley, they would have the native ritual, the drum circles, and they would have the teepees. They would have so many beautiful events, and we would go at sunrise. And I still tell my daughter, we go to sunrise ceremonies when it's just women. We go to homecomings still. I would still go to Spelman before my children were old enough, and then I took my sons. They still go to Morehouse homecomings. My husband, every year, he would go to um, uh, homecoming with his friends. A bunch of them would go down to to New Orleans, and they would tailgate so that they could go down to homecoming. You know, it's those things that preserve the history and the culture, and even little things like my sisters go, you know, they all call and say, "Hey, you ready to go on the uh why am I blanking on his name? On the cruise for for why am I blanking on his name? We go every year. For Um, uh, um,
Tom Joyner,
Tom Joyner,
Tom Joyner
Joyner
Cruz.
Cruz. Yeah, Tom Joyner Cruz, right? And BT.
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
it's things like this that everything doesn't have to be just slavery,
Oh no.
just doom and gloom. And so I think that what we have to do is, we do the voters drive and Black History Month. Everything is not only in February, right? And he's not only going to, you know, MLK Day or Black History Month or Juneteenth. It is so much more, and it's our responsibility to make sure that if we're preserving Black history, we're preserving it as part of American history. It is is in the fabric of everything we do. We've invented so much. So when I do, especially in my office, I make sure that everyone remembers that Black history is American history. I decorate my door every month and I build it into whatever I'm doing. So I think that that's the biggest thing because when we do something, it affects everyone. And so that's all for me, but I just wanted to say that I think the comprehensiveness, the realization that it's our responsibility to not assimilate so much that we give up who we are and we mm, I can't think of the word, but we end up regretting, right? Because
Anyway,
so many of our families say, I want you to, I don't want to, I'm going to give you this name, like Annabelle. So that when you apply for a job, they don't know that your name is, I'm going to use my name because I'm going to use this name because I love her name. I don't want them to look at Najwa on a, on a, on a job application and know that you're not, a blonde hair, blue eyed girl. Because I think Najwa is just a beautiful name, right? And if I see Najwa on job application, I'm gonna pull out Najwa because I know that Najwa is not a blonde haired blue eyed girl. Might fool me though. Might fool me though. Najwa might show up and be blonde haired, blue eyed, right? Because I've seen some hyenas and I see an hyena. I'm saying, wait a minute. And they don't know that hyena's gonna pop up and be this brown haired, redhead, freckle faced girl. Like, wait a minute. How you fool me, right? And that's my agenda. So I also think that that's important. Last thing I started to say it and I did on fingership, but when my mother used to tell us, correct our language, I did that for a long time. And I may have said this to you guys before. I did that for a long time. And I used to correct myself, trying to have perfect English until my brain started short wiring. And I didn't know that until my neurologist told me that you can't keep short wiring trying to switch between languages and um, you will eventually you'll short wire your brain and you will end up speaking gibberish. Uh, and because if I stop and concentrate really hard, I can speak really good English, and it will be very difficult for you to discern that I do not have a very thick accent. I just need to speak slower. However, who has time to speak this slow when they have things to get done? I still can't say thing. So, however,
Well done. Well
uh,
done. You get the Oscar. You get the Oscar, my sister. You get the
Halle
Oscar.
Berry, Halle
Excellent.
Berry, Halle Berry, Halle
Hey,
Berry.
hey. Sister Cheryl, you mentioned a word I think is so relevant today in many respects, and that word is assimilation. Um, You know, in my experience growing up, of course, as a 50th child or the 60th child, you know, the evolution of identifying who we were. What am I? And James Brown said, I'm black and I'm proud, etc. Those elements are very prevalent in the community then. But there was a resistance of trying to assimilate into, quote, European identity scales, whatever that might be. And it was like considered you're selling out. Now, let me relate that to some of us today. It annoys me to the core to see someone from our community trying to imitate another culture and say, Assalamu alaikum. I mean, you're giving up what God has given you that's uniquely only for you, that you have to offer to others if you just, quote, be yourself. You don't have to put on a thoba. I'm gonna insult some people now. You don't have to count beads. You don't have to pretend like you have adopted a culture that has nothing to do with your reality to be a servant of God. And so I've gotten into some serious discussion with some brothers who, you know, I know in the neighborhood and the habits in the neighborhood. And, you know, I never participated in all of those habits. I did do some. But as this same brother comes back all of a sudden with a, you know, uh, an emphasis on certain words that he's using that I know good and well he's pretending to be something that he's not. So to be authentic, to be what God has chosen you to be for real. And then you'll be more effective in your communication with people. But you don't have to pretend. I remember Imam Muhammad told us one time that somebody sent him a tape and almost put him to sleep. Said, I wish that brother would put some drums to it. As he was sounded like someone who had just come out from the Middle East, of course. And I won't get his name out, but he thought he was doing, you know, his service by putting together this CD with certain quotes on it. And he was pretty good in his enunciation. But that does not make you a, quote, complete human being because you can enunciate. You got to have a soul behind that somewhere. You got to have an authentic message somewhere in what you're trying to present to people for them to identify with what you're saying. So let's be for real, brothers and sisters. The assimilation really starts within your own soul. And who you give credit for producing a soul that's uniquely yours, that's your source of influence. That should be the first priority in your life. And not someone else's culture that may get you trapped into someone else's reality instead of just being yourself, inshallah. All right. We might
Can I
want to
add,
allow our, yes,
can I
yes, please.
add something?
Please do.
And Fahim
And I'll,
Shuaib, there was a unity Eid in the East Bay. Um, San Francisco community came over also, and he gave a really beautiful khutbah on taking the opportunity to follow um, Allah's guidance that He gives us on the day of Arafat, and in the Quran when it talks about um, we are created with these different languages and cultures and um, lives. Not that we will hate one another, but that we will come to know one another, to appreciate one another.
yes,
And this in the line of this cultural preservation and what you were just saying, as far as we have to see value. If I'm um, in on the plane of Arafat, and I came from Harlem, United States of America, and I have a particular culture from that experience, living in Chicago, living in California. And I bring all of that over with myself to Arafat. I have to have enough appreciation that um, Allah's plan for me was to go through all of that and to wear that cultural dress. And when I'm in Arafat, I have to have appreciation and gratitude for that experience, that culture that has shaped me, that I can share that maybe with someone who's from Turkey or someone who's from Canada or someone who's from Japan and don't feel other or less than. And
yes,
he was encouraging us that not to wait for just the Eid for us to come together and maybe on the surface just get to know one another, but also to throughout the year have social events where we come together, political events where we come together, economic collaborations where we come together,
Yes.
all of those things where we will come to know one another, and we are really in knowing one another, we're sharing the culture, because the culture is going to come with you if you're authentic to your culture. It's going to come with you, and you should be confident enough to share that and don't feel inferior or other to anyone else. And I will say also, not maybe in those words or in that expression, I think for me, and I'm just speaking for me, maybe others have experienced this also, but with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the experience of the Nation of Islam, um, maybe my own arrogance, I don't know. But I never have felt since that experience, I never have felt inferior to other people in other situations, cultural or social kind of situations. Um, and I think it's because of just the encouragement to get to know yourself and to be yourself can help to instill that in us. We had a super inflated kind of, direction with the nation and the mythology of the nation, but that was helpful. And hopefully, inshallah, we pass that on to our children, not to feel inferior um,
Yes.
in what, Allah has blessed them with in their history, in their development. So I just
Yeah, that's
wanted
so critical.
to
So
say that.
critical. Thank you very much. I know my grandfather, who named me after him, sort of got me started on that lane of loving yourself first. He was my mentor, my first hero outside my mother and father. And by working in his grocery store, he always put in me the idea of being self-reliant, knowing that you're just as smart as anyone else.
Yeah.
He would challenge the gentleman in the store who were much older than me to a math race with me to count a column of numbers. And he bragged, my grandson can, well, I won't use all the words he used. He used some colorful language any day of the week. And so there I would go, young boy, you just see my big head behind the counter. And I would go down these numbers very quickly and conclude what the answer was. And the old man would still be counting. Then he said, ha, 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 didn't I tell you my grandson can so and so and so and so? But he sort of put that in me. So in that environment, under his tutelage, when I finally got a chance to have a one-on-one with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his home, guess what came to mind? My grandfather. It was
Mhm,
like an extension of him in the person of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The
mhm,
idea of self-reliance, believing in yourself, not relying on others, making your own money, etc. And then the whole community at that time being family-oriented, that was the environment I grew up in. So to me, it was like an extension. Now we had that exaggerated mythology too, you know, about who God was. But the foundation of some of that teaching was fundamentally important for so many of our people who had no self-respect or no self-assurance. Let me say self-assurance of how important their life really was. So that I think was an absolute necessary element in our evolvement into a culture that we can all be proud of. There's a lot to be said about being yourself, being the person Almighty God wants you to be. And what is that person? That's like a lifelong journey for some of us. Fundamentally, it means don't you ever let any other human being think they're any more important than you are. You're on an equal pairing. And one of my best writers, Dr. Maya Angelou, she would always start off her lectures. We did some work together here in Winston-Salem, that nothing human is foreign to me. Nothing human is foreign to me. And she would go from there into her lecture, presentation. Um, so uh, cultural preservation is so essential. And as Sister Cheryl said, it's on us to pass it on. I know my grandchildren, they would get so upset with my wife because every holiday, the first thing they got was a book. This went on for years and years and years. And so when our children were very, very young, we started them reading in our laps. And even over the weekend, for my little 1.5-year-old granddaughter, she crawled up on me. So she picked out a little book. My son has gotten the message, my youngest son. She loves to read already. She can say some of the words already. She can say bread and horse and boat and, those kind of little things. But she loves to pick up and try to read what's in the book. So the reading element is so important. I almost had that letter that come to mind that I used to read to sort of insult our people. Mm-mm-mm. Because in Virginia, it was a code in Virginia at one point that you could be actually punished capitally for teaching a slave how to read. Uh, what's the name of that letter? In fact, you read it on the James River in Virginia to the people there.
Talking about the Willie Lynch
Thank
letter?
you. Yes, the Willow Lynch. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But the psychology behind the Willow Lynch letter, that methodology was still a part of our attitude toward each other for a long time. Putting each other down because of the skin tone, putting each other down because of your physical features, and attaching intelligent opportunity or aptitude with that. Something as simple as that kind of, description. The Willow Lynch letter. So all of that, we got to show our children how none of that should impact what God has given them at birth, and that is you're born with dignity and with honor from birth. You're born with dignity and honor from Almighty God, Allah. So don't let others reduce any of that in your travels through life. You're born with dignity and with honor. And so we somehow got to institutionalize that for our children going forward and let them know how important they really are with the balance, with the balance. And our children, they used to be on the stage a lot because I was on the stage a lot. We took them all kind of plays and, they had different interest level. My daughter was an outstanding swimmer until she got old enough to say, Dad, I don't want to get my hair wet. I said, baby, I put all this money into you, you don't want to get your hair wet. You're a synchronized swimmer. Oh, she went through that phase of her life. Now she's Dr. Fleming El-Amin at Duke University, so I can have to back up a little bit and let her have her way. Uh, so each one is so different. Now my youngest daughter, she's doing her doctoral work down at North Carolina State in civil engineering. In fact, inshallah, she graduated in December. So we're going to take her on a little cruise to applaud her for surviving all of that sometime in December on a little small cruise, 4-day cruise kind of thing. But look, let's open it up. Enter the guests on at this point so we can recognize them. It's don't see it's our brother Derek Young. He said he'd come on toward the end of the program. I wanted to give him a chance to talk about the One Love Festival. Don't see anyone yet on the line. Okay. Okay then. All right then. We'll move on forward then. Would any of our listening audience like to make a comment about why it's so important to preserve our culture going forward, preserving our culture and the significance of that in our community? While we're pausing, I will say this: when I was on Umrah in Medina at the Prophet's Masjid, I looked around and saw all these people, from so many different cultures, and almost tears came to my eye of appreciation of our orientation toward Al-Islam. We have a unique orientation, that we should never hide our roots anywhere in the world. It gives us a unique perspective on this religion. This does not make us extremists. So we have to really be proud of our history and include Farad Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad. Don't you put them down in the sense of trying to bury what their influence had in your lives, because it made a difference in your evolvement as a human being. So let's lift up all of our experiences, not just some of it. Inshallah, going forward.
So Brother Michael Hameen.
Yes. Yes, Brother Michael.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
assalam.
Alhamdulillah. Yes, this conversation on culture is very interesting. The Nation of Islam represented to us a language environment that would make it very difficult for us to look for leadership outside of ourselves. This this environment was as was heavily dosed with a medication that could have, well, it did not only could have, but it did overdose some people. The extreme language of blackness and of Muslim. Um, affected some people in a negative psychological way, imbalance. But the language was used to help us to gain balance because of the inferiority, the language of inferiority. Uh, Even up to this day, we went from a language environment that caused us to be dysfunctional in the vital areas of our life to where now the social life uh, affects us with these microaggressions, the insults. Um, I don't know how many of you saw the uh, the movie with Ingrid Bergman years ago, a black and white movie called Gaslighting. Well, we still have some of that. Bill Withers says, "You pouring muddy water on me, trying to make me think that it's raining." And for some, it's worse than that. It wasn't just mud. It wasn't muddy water. It was some other type of liquid, uh, undignified liquid. But the culture foundation is what was early described in the leadership of Imam Muhammad, the ethos, that thing that joins us together. The last time that I was on, a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, uh, I have a therapist who's from Puerto Rico, and I asked him about the mi familia and how he saw it expressed in his growing up, and the respect for the elderly, the respect for mama and daddy, and even making prayers, a greeting that prays for them, mentions the Dios, Dio, when they greet the parents and grandparents and the elderly, he prayers for them in greeting them. This is not something in terms of a tangible, but the intangible is more important than the tangible. The the mi familia idea or philosophy, we lost that, and they worked hard to keep us from holding on to that or grasping the idea of a philosophy of life, a sacred philosophy of life that binds us. And lastly, we we've lost the spiritual integrity that many of the ancestors had. They believed that God, Almighty God, would help them and that there would be a new day. One day there would be a different reality, a more healthy reality. And that spiritual integrity has been lost. I hear political operatives talking about God, 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 and Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And when they go to church to get the votes, and they turn around and become Negro managers of Caucasian interests, and they take the lobbying money, and if they don't toe the line, then they get the lobbyists will find somebody else to run them out of office. And I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Uh, I've learned over the years that the grace of Allah is always with a group of people. And so we should be very careful with a paintbrush of all the people, because all those elements that makes a difference who are not mystified by the traps of what we call shaitan or Satan, or with power and authority, etc. We just want to do good in life and be good people. And I work with a lot of interfaith groups, and I always remind them that indeed we claim to be people of faith, and yet we can have a person living in your neighborhood 2 doors down who is in difficulty, and you walk past that person every day without offering them any kind of assistance, even if there's no more than a smile and a greeting and a question of concern about them, but yet you say you have faith. So where is your real faith if you're not demonstrating that faith in a real way in the community? So we have those elements always working. Some of them we don't see because they're not on TV, but there's always a collage of people that I have discovered in my short lifetime that are doing good work. And so we have to be careful, as I said. And I work with so many young people, I will always tell them that you are our future and our present. So just remember that in your behavior. You are our future and our present, and we're going to rely on you. You know, when I'm of the age where I need some medical assistance, I want to look in your face when I'm on the operating table. Or when I need someone to come and take care of an incident in my house, I want to look at your faces so you come to my driveway. So you got to think about those things as you make decisions in your life going forward. But I'm convinced that we always have those elements by the grace of Allah working for the good. Even though you may not hear about them, the narrative is not that popular. It's not on TV, but there's the encouragement is always there. It's never the majority. You know, I was in a meeting, in fact, last week, and I reminded the group. I said, "Listen, it's not the numbers; it's the commitment of the people that you're with. And don't forget now. Let's go back in history a little bit, scripturally. You know, one person who could barely speak and his brother made a world of difference in the lives of many. One person who only had 12 to work with him made a world of difference in the lives of people. And one person had to hide in a cave. People trying to kill him and his best friend. But look at what the world has become because of their two influences initially. And of course, his beloved wife. So we don't look at the numbers. We look at the impact of people and the good they do on society. And we have to be very, very careful with our narratives because we want to be the encouraging factor. We want to be the encouraging factor for progress and positive influence in our community, inshallah. Not overlooking the problems, but giving a narrative that encourages people to do better, you know, at all times and not condemn them because none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, and by the grace of Allah, we come out of it and learn from that and keep on going forward, inshallah. In other hands, before we go into our second component, that is civic engagement and the need to be civically engaged, how important it is today, especially.
I don't see any other hand, but can I make 2 points?
Yes, ma'am. Please, by all
Came
means.
to
Yes,
mind
ma'am.
as you were talking. Past week, I don't know why, but I came across 2 things online that dealt with the Statue of Liberty. And I think it was because of, all of the immigration um, narrative in the news.
Mhm.
And so they were talking about the Statue of Liberty, and one was definitely AI generated, of Dr. Joy DeGraw, who
Mm.
came up with the post-slavery traumatic syndrome or post-slavery, trauma syndrome.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
Um, uh, she came up with it after Imam Muhammad had given a lecture several years before talking about the trauma of the slavery situation. But and it was just a little AI generated video of her, and she went and she studied this. Someone had told her that the Statue of Liberty was really a Black woman, and her chains were taken off, and that's why the French sculptor had given it to America because it was after the Declaration of the Emancipation Declaration and blah 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 blah. So and it takes it to she went down to the bottom part of the statue, and she found the original layout of what it looked like and blah blah blah. Anyway, I had years ago had read about that, that the statue was really um, an African woman and the freedom of the slaves. And so then I thought, with all that is going on, what connected in my mind? Because in my mind, I was saying, before these things reminded me of it, um, how can these people have these really what would be the word exclusionary ideas of um, immigration and keeping people out when the history of this whole country has been waves of immigrants through the decades coming into the country, and I'm thinking about Statue of Liberty, give me your poor, I mean, welcoming immigrants in, and now you're kicking immigrants out. So that had been in my mind. And so I guess, I don't know if the algorithm picked up that that had been in my mind from other stuff I had been looking at. So when these two things came, I thought, just putting things in context with the whole replacement theory fear that uh, white Christian nationalists have drummed up into the MAGA movement, and the whole rise of these supremacist groups. With all of that, of course, they would ignore, that have that type of thinking would ignore um, a iconic figure like the Statue of Liberty that's welcoming everybody in, because they don't want everybody to come in. They have realized that they actually are the minority in this country, and they keep um, in power because they keep us separated and divided and fighting among each other, and um, that whole concept of assimilation. When you come here, and I'm going to tie it to Marco Rubio too. Now, here he is a descendant of immigrants to this country, and now he's working hard to keep and throw out immigrants because of a quest for power. He presents himself as someone who is really after power and holding power, maintaining power through assimilation, through denying your own history. And so you don't preserve your own culture and history because you want to assimilate and get in with the power structure that has been in place to keep people that look like you or sound like you down. And so this iconic figure that represents welcoming everyone in, you think of, I go back to the Afrikaners that came in. First they had 45 that came in, and then last week they just brought, I think, another 59. They brought a second group in. Excuse me. And the countries that they are restricting people coming in, people of color, Muslims and whatnot. But, we're going to let in Afrikaners or Europeans, or I heard someone that said, it was somewhere, someone maybe had a meme or something about President Trump. He talked about how immigrants, poison the blood and this. So are these Afrikaners going to poison the blood of American citizens, or does that only apply to people from the South? What they call the South now, in terms of the global terminology, the global South, as they put it, African people. So all of these thoughts were just rolling around in my head. And when you ask the question in terms of the importance of preserving culture, from our experience with the slavery experience, many of us, or if not all of us, a great deal of our original culture before coming here to America may have been lost because of that experience of packing people on ships, speaking different languages, maybe not being able to communicate with one another, being prohibited from communicating with one another, being stripped, I mean, just physically stripped of your native garb, everything that may have been done to kill the idea of culture in us because we were perceived as property or animals. Yet God, in his mercy, blessed us with that um, that environment of oppression caused us to, in order to survive, to develop and evolve a new culture for ourselves. I think that culture is important for a people's survival too. You know, your
Yeah.
physical survival, your mental, your spiritual survival. Um, the culture gives life to you, just like in the lab, you need a culture to grow whatever organism you're trying to grow. I think the same is true on the societal level too. So a lot is in your question as far as what's the importance of cultural preservation. I think it's the actual survival of us as a people. And it's in many forms, the language, the food, the clothing, the dress, you know, the cultural expression, the poetry, you know. I think of in the 60s, you know, people like Sonia Sanchez, who was later Layla Manan, and Vicky
Yes. Yes.
Giovanni, mentioned Amiri Baraka earlier. You know, all of these. So sometimes I laugh sometimes when the youngsters of the day, they talk about spoken word, like this was the first time spoken word was in the universe. I'm like, do you know Vicky Giovanni? Do you know Sonia Sanchez? You know, come on.
Mm,
But an important part about that is the rise of those people were not promoted in the general population, the general curriculum of schools, you know, those who go to public schools. And unless you maybe went to an Afrocentric educational institution, you may not have heard of these people. So you can't blame them. It goes back to what Cheryl was said, you know, in terms of the generation that experienced it. Unless we pass that down, we can't be critical of those who don't know about it. So,
yes.
we get
You
a
know,
lot.
thank you very much for the insight. It reminded me, I was involved in writing a curriculum for an African American course for the school system. It was a community effort. And we designed the course with certain books that would be required on the college level, the high school level, et cetera. We wanted a very demanding course, so they would indeed have exposure to a Dr. W. Du Bois or J. Rogers or James Baldwin, excuse me, Francis Fanon, et cetera. And we wanted to find a textbook that would include all of that, as well as much history as we could of the African continent. And it took us about a year to finally come up with a curriculum guide, et cetera, get it approved. And then the school system says, well, we can't teach it for the whole year. We have to combine that with another course to make
Mm.
it go forward through the curriculum committee. So we did all this work, got it approved, but they matched it up with a course on sociology. I said, well, I'll be John Brown. I won't say what I said, but so half semester African American history, second semester sociology. And that worked for some time. You know, it was not what we wanted. It was part of a compromise effort. But we put a lot of work into making sure we had a curriculum that was really uh, sufficient for the children and allowed them to engage also, especially a lot of part of the course. They had to apply this in their communities and see why it was relevant today. Long story short, though, we have to somehow institutionalize those values for the next generation and also allow them to participate in the continuation of that. One of my grandchildren would always tell me, Granddad, I don't want to go to Africa because she's always talking about slavery. And it's got to be more to Africa than slavery. I said, you're absolutely right, baby. There's much more to Africa than slavery. You have 80 countries on that continent. So don't let what they say in school determine the reality on the African continent. Do your own research. And she said, Granddad, you always said in your classroom you had three things on your board. His, SCRY, her, SCRY, and a question mark, your SCRY, to get us to think about what is your history. Don't just follow what they say in the curriculum guide. You develop an interest in developing an appetite for discovery for yourself. And through discovery, you learn a whole lot more than what's in the standard curriculum. It also brought to mind a couple other things when you were talking. Um, you know, exposure is so important for children at an early age, just to get them around different experiences that may very well lead into careers for some of them. Um, I had no idea that my little sixth grade daughter at the time, she went to where my wife got her PhD at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg and went to a science STEM program, and they were building bridges out of popsicle sticks. She's in the sixth grade, okay? But she built this magnificent, complex structure. That little sixth grade child became a civil engineer eventually. But that's what sparked her interest in that and became a licensed civil engineer and worked for ASHA in Washington, D.C. for a number of years. That's the same one who's now finishing her PhD down in North Carolina State in civil engineering. But that exposure when she was in the sixth grade focused her into a career pattern that she may have never experienced had she not been exposed. So we got to put our children in an environment to stimulate them because we never know how long, how forward thinking that might impact them to become into a future quality of life. And some of that, of course, is on us. And then we have to be careful also. We really want to encourage the best out of our children. And when I say our children, I mean every child you see is on a part of you that you didn't see before. I'll leave that where it is. Because someone didn't take the time to work with that child. So this is the result. And in some cases, all it took was a kind word. Um, I had a young student who got pregnant, and the kids gave her a hard time, you know. And you know how children can be sometimes. They can be merciless. And so this same little girl, I would talk to her after the class sometime and say, listen, you made all A's for a number of, grading periods. What's really going on? So she shared with me some very personal stuff. She said her mother had left her house and she was in the house with just her baby sister trying to make it, doing the best she could. At 16, her sister was only 6. So the mother, I found out later on, had become an addict. That powder stuff, what do you call it? Wasn't cocaine, it was something else then. It was the little crystallized stuff that people were picking off the shirts.
Meth?
Yes,
Methamphetamine.
methadone. Yes, yes, yes. And so she was so hooked up, she actually left her children, and the father was nowhere to be, in the environment. So we ended up getting her placed in another school. She ended up graduating. I saw this young lady maybe 10 years later. I was at a restaurant, me and my wife, and she walked up to me dressed in this uniform with all kind of stars and all the emblems on it. And she said, Miss El-Amin, because you paid attention to me, I'm now Lieutenant Colonel, and I think it was the Air Force. But your interest made the difference in my life, So just paying attention to people, you don't have to work miracles. Just give them a heartfelt message can make a world of difference in their lives going forward. But we got to shift now to civic engagement because it's very, very important.
You
And that's
got a
part of our.
hand. You got a hand that's been
Oh,
up for a while.
hold on,
Oh,
brother.
got a hand up.
Hold on,
Oh,
brother.
okay.
Hold on,
All right
brother.
then.
Brother Muhammad Sharif had his hand first.
All right then.
Michael Hamid. Brother Muhammad Sharif, you want to unmute yourself? He was driving and then I don't know. Brother Muhammad Sharif, you want to unmute yourself? I don't. Brother Muhammad Sharif, final call. You want to unmute yourself? You have your hand up. You can unmute yourself. I see your mouth moving, but you're not unmuting yourself. So you're on your phone. You have to find the location on your phone to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now, Sis Matla?
Yes, we got you. Go
I
right
have
ahead.
I have a question and a statement. Now, question is, I hear Imam Michael speak a lot about gaslighting. I didn't see the movie, so what does gaslighting mean? Explain that.
Oh,
Okay. All right.
all right.
Brother Michael, just answer that question before you go to your comment or question.
I didn't really have a comment. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss Muhammad.
Okay.
Okay.
So he
Gas,
asked how do you mean
gaslighting.
gaslighting?
Gaslighting, an example of it is the song Bill Withers sang. And one of the lyrics, it says, "You're pouring muddy water on me. You're pouring more muddy water on me, but you're trying to make me think that it's raining." The movie, the movie dealt with a time where where indoor lighting was done by gas, and in the basement you had the regulation of the gas, the volume of the gas. So she had a husband who, with some other people, were making her think that, tried to make her think that she was going crazy by lowering the volume of the gas so that the lighting would get dim. And they would tell her that there's nothing wrong. The light is just fine. So that's what gaslighting is.
Brother Muhammad Sharif, you had a comment you said also.
I guess what is I tell the people I suggest them that go back and listen to Prophet Muhammad's last public address, and let's see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's last public address, Savior's Day, 1974, when he said we can no longer blame the white man. He said that a number of times you got to do for self, do for self. You cannot blame the white man anymore. And since that time, he said that, well, look like the white man, the so-called white man, he has removed himself out of the picture. And it look like it's the Asians or other people now that's in control of us and everything else. And we can't blame even the white man, so-called white man anymore. All of our neighborhoods, anywhere you are, California, Georgia, wherever, the people that's controlling everything now see the Asians or somebody else. It's no longer the white man. So now when our children go into our communities and everything, they don't see, all they see now is Asians that's controlling everything, our food, clothing, and shelter. So what are we going to do about, another reason why I'm saying this, because like we didn't really follow Imam W.D. Muhammad's last public address when he told us if there's if there are 3 or 4,000 people and there are 3 or 4 of you, then Allah has chosen you to take us across the goal line. And when I say this, it seems like I'm not reaching us when I say that. When ma'am say, if there are 3 or 4,000 people, and there are 3 or 4 of you, then Allah has chosen you to lead us to the goal line and across the goal line. So what do y'all think about that?
Well, I was listening to a lecture of Imam Muhammad day before yesterday, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
and he referenced the Savior's Day that you're talking about, which was for those who don't know, that was the national convention that the Nation of Islam would have on February, if not on February 26th, as close to February 26th as possible. And that there was a Caucasian man on this stage, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad turned to him and said, this is a white man. And he said to the audience, if the white man respects us, then we're obligated to respect him.
That's exactly what he said.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then a little bit later on in that tape that Imam Muhammad was making, he said that he referenced the Hajj and Arafat, and as far as so many, you see humanity there. You see people from all over the country, different ethnicities, nationalities. And he said, here in America, we have that same dynamic as far as you have people from all over the world. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, not an exact quote. He said that we've come into al-Islam with the Quran and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as our leader, who is a mercy to all the worlds, to all people. And he said, those of us who are in my association, if this is, the leadership that we have, Prophet Muhammad's leadership, and the Imam also gave the example of Salman al-Farsi, who was one of the companions of the Prophet. He was Persian, he was Caucasian. So the Imam went on further to say, why then in my association we don't have the diversity in the leadership of our association? Why we don't have Caucasian imams in our association? He didn't say that. He may have said that specifically, but Hispanic imams in our association. Now I know in our or Asian
Hmm.
imams in our association. So
Right, right. Hmm.
we do have a growing population of Hispanics who are accepting Al-Islam, and we have, Hispanics in the Association of Imam Muhammad, who I know in San Francisco there's a brother who's an imam. He recently came back from Yemen, um, and so the imam was um, I would say, encouraging us to broaden our thinking to accept everyone in the leadership of our association. And we don't seem to have done that um, for whatever reason. Maybe we are not making dawah out to everyone that we possibly could. The Imam made dawah in terms of the collaboration with the Focolari,
Right,
which has
right,
many
Brother groups.
different nationalities in that group. Maybe he did
Yes.
that to be an example to us. So don't be afraid.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, I think it's the individual and the community's maturity. When we made Hajj, um, I've been looking at Brother Fleming all morning with his shades on.
right.
I was going to
Red
say,
shades on.
Brother Fleming, you trying to put your Jamil El-Amin on us in your dashiki and your shades,
Oh
because
man.
he was on Hajj the year that I went, and when I thought of him, man, may Allah forgive him his sins, and grant him peace and health with his struggle with his incarceration. But I
Yes.
think that we have to embrace the prophets. You referenced the prophets last sermon. I think we have to
Yes.
embrace that. And we
Yes.
have to
Yes.
embrace the last sermon of Elijah Muhammad and Imam Muhammad
Mhm.
and go from there. I think it's our
Mm.
Yeah.
mindset. I think
Yes.
it's our mindset why we don't see that, Brother Muhammad. I
And
don't know if that answers
I would
that.
just I would add 30 seconds to that. I was in Chicago in 1974 working on the Secretary staff when Honorable Elijah Muhammad made the reference to two guests up in the audience, and he refers to them as scientists, and he made the
Right,
comment also about
exactly. It's
they're here.
scientists, yes.
Yes, they were scientists, and they're respecting us, so we got to respect them.
Yes.
And I was also in Detroit in 2008 when Imam Muhammad gave his last public address there. And I've, like all the believers, inshallah, I've studied Imam Muhammad, hopefully, and incorporated in your personal life the things that he taught us. That he said what he taught us the last 1,000 years. Now, what does that mean in your individual behavior today to reflect that? You have to accept two great blessings, I think, that Allah has given all of us. One is the guidance of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That was a blessing. The second was the universal guidance of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad with the foundation that his father gave him. That gives us a unique leadership position in the world today. Now, if you don't realize it, travel a little bit. We
Travel a
really
little
have been
bit, right.
blessed with
Mhm.
travel. Yes, just travel a little bit. You know, I've been to Ghana, Benin, Egypt, etc., Mecca, Medina. I don't see anyone coming close to the tafsir of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad. Period. In fact, I got into a little trouble in Morocco one time when I said, listen, I know what the tradition says, but as far as I'm concerned, my walking Holy Quran is Imam Warithuddin Muhammad. And that's my guiding post. So he guided me to, of course, Prophet Muhammad and the purity of the Holy Quran. But his example in my life is what I use to make my decisions on. And hopefully Allah will guide me, to make the right decision. But that's my tafsir that I follow. I read the Holy Quran, I read the Hadiths, then I pick up a lecture and hear a lecture from Imam Muhammad every day. So some of us have done that. but don't wait for others to join you. Just do what you can do. The Lord's giving you the energy and the interest in doing. And as he says, to each is the goal that will turn him. So get in a race with all that is good, and the help will come. Don't be discouraged, be encouraged. You always have somebody watching you and helping you, that person we call Allah. I could say a whole lot more, but I don't want to take up all the time. Let's see if someone else has a question. I hope that sort of answered your question. Those that can will, but you can't wait for those that don't. You just go ahead and do what Allah's blessed you to do and move on forward, bro. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Sister Amatullah,
Thank you.
for that explanation.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Yes.
And I would say also, Brother Muhammad, try to join the Year of the Quran Zoom if you can, that Imam Fahim Shuaib and Brother Zaid Shak, Brother Zaid Abdul Kareem host every morning. It's a halakha after the Fajr prayer. For us here, it's from 5:30 to 6:30. Your time would probably be 8:30 to 9:30. And a lot that is presented has to deal with your mindset, individually changing your mindset, and eventually the community's mindset will be changed. And also, this morning, the topic was on gratitude for what Allah has blessed us with, and having that gratitude, how it causes us, the benefit of it will cause us to move forward with that which we are commanded by Allah to do. So for anyone who is not on that particular Zoom, I would encourage you to join it. It's been really a blessing.
And there are two other outlets I think we were very helpful too, Brother Muhammad. The Lifeline group that reviews books written by Imam Arthur Muhammad. It's an excellent group to be a part of. And the group that comes on every Sunday, Study al-Islam, gives you more of a broader perspective of the full community. I'm always encouraged with the Medina effort, New Medina down in Mississippi. They have actually physicalized what Imam Muhammad said in terms of building a new Africa. And that's not the only location either. It's also one up in upstate New York. But there are elements in the country that's really taken to heart what Imam Muhammad did, as well as in Washington, D.C., building the Clara. That's a fantastic realization of an effort from the community where senior citizens can actually live and have a quality of life that we're responsible for governing, et cetera. So some work is being done. Some work is being done, inshallah. All right. Let's
Yes,
continue
I
our
listen to
time. I know it's running.
I listen to
Go.
Lifeline every day, every morning. Listen to Lifeline every day,
Yes,
and
yes.
also I
Alhamdulillah.
listen to study. So I just thought I'd like to hear someone else's thoughts on what we should be doing, and it kind of,
Yes,
pardon me, in our Cal Muhammad school system. Now we only have 4 full-time Claire Muhammad schools in this whole community.
Yeah.
North, East, South, and West. Only 4 full-time Claire Muhammad schools. Now, under one of those portions on the page 11, you see some young people look like they are under 10 years old reading the Muslim Journal. And what I can't understand is why we don't have the Muslim Journal coming to everybody's household so our grandchildren, great-grandchildren can be like those young ones that's reading the Muslim Journal. Because if we did not get in the paper and our children, our great-grandchildren don't see what those young people are doing reading the Muslim Journal, what's going to happen to our young grandchildren and great-grandchildren that don't even see the Muslim Journal? They're going to be so far behind the ones that are reading this paper.
And you get no disagreement from me on that one, Brother Muhammad. I think that how they say necessity is the mother of invention. I think that when you're faced with the reality of the educational system, Imam Fahim made a point, this, and I think it was in his Juma, he was saying Brandeis University was established for the uh, the Jewish community to be able to advance.
Mm-hmm.
He named one other. Let's say he didn't name this, but let's just say Santa Clara University was established for
Mhm.
Christian ideology, and Catholic children to be able to advance in a society. So where are we? You know, what do we have? And so I agree with you. Um, for me, it was no question that I wanted my children in Clara Muhammad School, and they started. Um, and then when they couldn't go anymore, we homeschooled till we got them out. And I breathed a sigh of relief, like, whew, thank you, Allah, I got through that, because that was the one thing in their early life that I thought was going to give me a nervous breakdown, was them getting through an educational system. And I felt that I had some relief. Now, you asked a question about grandchildren. We don't have a Clara Muhammad School here in Oakland any longer. I just got a new grandson. Now I feel like I'm on the verge of another breakdown because what's going to be available to him. So, and I have friends all of a sudden, all these grandbabies coming around, people who have gone through having a Clara Muhammad School or not having a Clara Muhammad School. So it looks like these 70 and 80 somethings are going to have to get back in the ring and work towards getting a Clara Muhammad School. We just got to do it. The Imam in a lecture, he said, if you have a masjid, you you should have a school. He said that in
Right.
several
Yeah.
lectures. If you have a
Yes.
masjid, you should have a school. If you
Yes.
if you get a school building, make the gym your masala area if necessary. If the only
Yes.
thing you can afford is a
Mm.
school building with a gym, make the masala area that
Yeah.
gym for
Yes.
Juma or for the five prayers. So, you know, people, all money is not good money, and free is just that. It's free. And what you're going to get for free may not going to be what you have to sacrifice for to pay for. And
Yeah.
so people go with what they can do. We got to get more business people, people who have resources, financial resources, because it takes a lot to run a school. If you're talking about a full school in operation, you're not
Mm-hmm.
talking about a little bit of money. You're talking about
Talking about
a lot.
big money, big
You're talking
money.
about
Yeah.
big money. And so
Yes.
you got to have people who are going to sacrifice and who also have financial resources to support
It is so.
the school. So
And we have to give the efforts that are being done toward education by Imam Adam Biyal, his 150 effort.
that's right.
They've been doing that for a number of years now. They
Yeah,
raised well in excess of $200,000 to give to our established schools. And Imam Muhammad said that if we should at least have a weekend school
yes,
everywhere we're located at, that's the very minimum because it doesn't cost a lot of money. And also offer programs for those students who are in the public school settings. But we need to be in an environment that we are responsible for, that we can control to give our kids the best opportunities going forward. Um, and there are some efforts to do an online school. I've talked to a couple of people who are sort of trying to put that together, an Islamic online school. That's not the same as having a physical facility, but it is something that our
right,
children, inshallah, can be exposed to going forward,
right,
inshallah.
right. There are two.
All
There's
right.
one. There's one in Virginia, and there is one in New Medina. Claire Muhammad online school,
Online. Okay. Okay.
homeschool online.
Okay. Alhamdulillah.
Um,
Alhamdulillah.
I want to say
Okay.
something I want
The,
to say something about the
the,
newspaper. Newspapers, period, are having a hard time, especially the hard copy papers. And I will just say that, um, you know, going back to what I said earlier about how do we preserve history, and a lot of times, and whether you do it or not is not the issue. I mean, on a greater scale. we keep putting on young people or younger people or the generation behind you something that's you're not doing yourself, right? Because when I look around, I'm not seeing a whole bunch of the people in front of me reading the newspaper.
Mm, mm, right.
So you can't be saying, oh, the young people are reading the newspaper if you're not reading. So what I'm saying is when I wanted my children to read every Friday night and then sometimes on the weekend, Sunday, all the TV's off, put the phones down, put everything down. Even my husband, because he's like, well, but the game is on. I don't care. I don't care if you read the sports
Right.
page, get your Sports
Mm-hmm.
Illustrated or whatever. We are
Mm-hmm.
demonstrating. We're not going to do as I tell you, we're going to demonstrate. And my children would crawl up in the bed. And it started when I had one, and then when I had two, they would do it. And then by the time I had three, they kicked him out of the bed, and they would crawl up in the bed, and we would get, and I had this book, it was about 3 inches thick. And it was a book of, we had two of them. One was African fables, and the other one was Native American tales. And actually, I should say the third one because the third one was in Spanish. And we would sit and we would read. And when and to teach them to read, as they would read, we would take turns reading the line. And the oldest one would read, and the second one would read, and then the baby, she was too little. And we would take turns and we would read. And we would do that for 2 or 3 hours, and then they could go back to watching a show or something else. But everybody would have books, an actual book, not an electronic book, not anything else. And that built this love of turning the papers. And it was funny because when they learned how to drive, my son, I got them a library card when they were very small. And we would go to the library and check out books. And a friend of mine told me not that long ago that she saw my son. He came home. They're all three home right now. And well, two of them are in New York right now on it's Puerto Rican parade, Sister Amatullah. So they went for the Puerto Rican parade, my sons. But they were home on a visit, and my daughter's here. And a friend said she saw my son and my daughter at the library getting books. And she said, it's very interesting to see young people actually come in and check out books.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's because that's a ritual that we have been doing since they were small children. So if you want to see them reading newspaper, then you need to read the newspaper. Maybe buy them the
Yeah.
newspaper and give it to them.
Mhm.
But having it on the shelf at the masjid, having it on the shelf at the school, or telling them, you need to be reading the newspaper. Really? Because I don't see you, because they're real quick to say, I don't see you reading it.
Yes.
Right.
Do,
Uh-huh.
do you see what
Yes.
I mean? You
Yeah.
gotta
Mm-hmm.
set the example. You say, well, you need to be going. Why? When's the last time you went to the African American Museum? When's the last time you went to the Black Museum? When's the last time you went, you know, to prayer? When's the last time you went? You see what I mean? It's don't be
Yes.
telling people to do something if you're not doing it or you're not setting the example. So
Yes.
this, I just wanted to say that because
Excellent.
we
Yes.
aren't
It's very,
doing it,
very,
you can't expect them to do it. And just because one or two of us are doing it, the community needs to set it. So we're responsible for moving forward to close it out and to go back to Brother Fleming's original question to preserve Black history. We are the arbiters of that. Can't keep asking other people to preserve it for us. We
that's
have to
excellent.
push it forward.
And
Thank you,
I'll
Let's
make,
sister.
I'll make,
go.
I'll make two comments very quickly. I'm a lifetime subscriber to Muslim Journal, and I would tell the brothers when we meet in the Mid Atlantic section, when was the last time you read something during your khutbah from Muslim Journal? We used to read
Right.
something
Good.
from Elijah Muhammad every time we open up our mouths at
Mm-hmm.
the temple saying we quoted the Honorable Elijah Muhammad faithfully. And we encouraged the brothers. We didn't encourage them. You had to pick up your papers through other any means necessary. However, you heard the value of that paper from the leadership. Now, I always challenge young brothers. I'm a young 73, but I tell the brothers, look, you got to pick up, at least show Muslim Journal and read something from it when you're giving a khutbah. People have to see your
Mm-hmm.
attention and importance to it. It just can't be a conversation piece. Now, I did my share of Salah Muhammad speaks over the years, like a lot of brothers I know, but we still got that's our communication piece. Communication in the military is the heartbeat of your community. If you destroy communication, you destroy the connection with the community. So it's on us to sort of see the value of that and be the example. Don't just be the conversation piece, be the example. Um, Inshallah, I don't want to get into the whole football on that, but that's our heart.
You,
That's our chronicle of our history. If we don't
you can go
appreciate
on,
our own
you
history, how can
you
you
can go on
appreciate
with the
someone else's
football.
history?
Everybody can go on with the football on it. If you want to talk about the education, that's right. Number one
Yeah,
priority.
alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Yes, sir. Well, listen, I know that we had a second part of our discussion this afternoon, and that was on civic engagement. So let's at least give an opportunity to have that discussion at this point of our presentation this evening. We've been engaged in civic engagement in this conversation on a degree, and that has been involved, you know, being informed and staying engaged, and those things that are important to you. We are obligated to do that. And I always like to refer to Imam Muhammad's book entitled On Islam and American Democracy, that we always sort of keep this close to your bookshelf when you talk about the political arena, because several parts of that book, the Imam would tell us that we have an obligation to make this country better. And he said the essence of the American life is simply in that second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, where it states we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now that concept, as we all know, is an Islamic concept. There's no mention of a certain deity, but just creator. And there are specific things that our Creator gives every human being. And we have to put our shoulder to the wheel and make that more of a reality in this country, because at this point, it's very toxic. People are not seeing the value of every human being. We're trying to put each other down over some foolishness called an American dollar and elevating your importance based on how much money you have in your bank account versus what you're doing to serve the community. So let's be mindful of that. Get a copy of the book on Islam and American democracy. Get involved in your community. And your political involvement is critical, especially now. You can't be silent and expect things to change. You can't be inactive and expect things to change. You can't not vote and expect people who voted in to be concerned about your concerns because they respond to their constituents. So let's be engaged. Know that we have a quality of life that we hold dear to our lives, that we want our children to inherit and our grandchildren to inherit. So we have to fight for that. We don't just surrender. We fight for what's right for our community's sake, inshallah, going forward. I'm going to pause there to see if any of those guests came on before we open up again for questions. Sister Amatullah, what time is it now? I'm looking at the wrong thing, I think.
We are 30 minutes past our time, our closing time.
Oh my, oh my God. Oh, Allah, forgive me. Oh, we did not hit 30 minutes past our time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we'll be
exactly
starting.
12:30 Pacific time. And if
Yeah,
that serves me right, that's 3:30 Eastern time.
yeah.
Eastern
I
time,
know I know we
3:30.
started late, but sorry, yes, we're a little late.
Well, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Well, I want to thank everybody for participating. Uh, I think we had a very lively and important conversation this afternoon, and inshallah, we will continue next Monday. I uh, I want to also lift up, if you have an opportunity in your community, participate in the Juneteenth celebration. And I'm not wearing shades; these are actually glasses. My other glasses that are clear, I left in my other car that's now in Raleigh, North Carolina. So my wife I think she brought them up. Baby, you got, oh, excuse me. I think she has them up hiking, but she brought them home for me. But these are glasses of brothers and sisters, not shades.
Okay. Transitional
All right.
lenses.
Yes.
Transitional lenses. Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
I thought
Alhamdulillah.
you went back to the
All right.
60s with Black Power.
Oh, well, that's always in my heart. That's always in my heart. Never far removed from my essence.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
you
Oh, man.
you reminding us of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the shades.
That's true. In his shades, too.
Alhamdulillah.
That's
Yes.
exactly true.
Oh, man. Well, let's give some opportunity for closing remarks then as we conclude our brilliant discussion this afternoon. Sister Amatullah and then Sister Cheryl, what would you like to do to close out our piece this afternoon? Conversation, conversation, not just presentation. Who'd like to go first?
Well, I would say that anyone who, if what you see going on in LA strikes you, call your representatives wherever you are in the country. Call their local office and also their DC office to let them know your feelings, your reaction to what you see as far as what ICE is doing. Um,
Yeah.
it's very, very important because remember, one of the first things he started out with was um, citizenship. You know, if you're
Yes.
born in America, he wanted to end that you are a citizen. Say if your parents were illegal, but you're born here, he wanted to get away with you naturally inheriting U.S. citizenship because you're born in this country. What if
Yes.
he, just a what if? What if he wants to trace it all back to when that amendment was established? Because it was established
Mm,
because of slavery, because of our
right.
existence. What if he wants to wipe out all of that? Do we all of a sudden become non-citizens?
Mm, mm,
You know, that these
Mm,
people are
good
so,
question.
they're so far off in their thinking and what they're trying to implement. I wouldn't put it past them um, to say, well, your name was Jackson and now you have it El-Amin. So you're a threat to our foreign agenda.
mm,
Know what Marco Rubio might say. So we need to
yeah.
support this. He gave up Jackson. We had um,
Mm,
Andrew Jackson. Um,
mm,
Jackson wasn't
mm,
good enough
mm,
for you, Fleming. Now you want to be El-Amin. You're a threat to our national
mm,
security.
mm, mm,
You don't know
Mm,
mm,
what logical thought these people will try to present, and the Supreme Court shows that they are so wishy-washy. One time they're strong, and another time they're weak, and another time they're
really.
lukewarm. So we can't rely on them all the way.
Yes. Stay engaged. Please stay
Hey,
engaged and stay informed.
yeah.
Uh, I'll make a few comments and I'm gonna let Sister Cheryl close us out. Um, I said early on that we have to be sensitive to the hurt that others are suffering, to the concerns that other people are going through, and we have to have an open heart to absorb that and do something about it. And as the tradition says, we do it with our hands to change it. We can't do it that way. We speak out against it. And of course, we can't do that. At least have it in our hearts. But we want to first try to change it ourselves with our hands. This is the time, brothers and sisters, to really be engaged and to really demonstrate what Allah has given you in terms of leadership. Get off the sidelines. Get off the sidelines. Let's stay engaged and be true when it comes to identifying with this land and what it best represents, and not this German occupied now at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Sister Cheryl?
Classic comentaris.
Ah,
So let's start there. If you don't know what it means it was enacted in 1878 to prohibit the use of the U.S. military for domestic law enforcement. Prevent the U.S. government for using U.S. military to intervene in civilian affairs, which is why you have Governor Newsom here in California pushing back. It is also, the act was passed, so there could not be excessive use of the military during the Civil War and Reconstruction to enforce the laws of the South. You can use it for border security and disaster response if it is necessary. Examples, besides border security and disaster response, when there's civil disturbances, you have to coordinate it with the state. It is an overreach unless it's a national emergency, as what happened with, for instance, 9/11, or a civil war, an actual civil So I mention that because I want people to look it up. But that act, Posse Comitatus Act, bars federal troops from participating in civilian law enforcement, except where expressly authorized by law. Everyone needs to be pushing back on it. If you do not, we could see a complete breakdown in the way that the United States is not only governed but run. If you want to go back to pre-1878, and this is not hyperbole, it is truth. If you want to look it up and you can't spell Posse Comitatus, just look up the Knott Amendment, Knott, and that will get you to it. If you want to preserve the history, the memory, the struggles, and the triumphs, don't forget the triumphs. We don't need to just talk about the struggles of the community, but talk about the triumphs as well. It's crucial. The triumphs are crucial to remember how we empower and how we bring through the resilience of our communities, how we highlight the endurance and the strength of our communities. We have to understand where we come from and where we are and how we get further. Next week, Juneteenth on Thursday, great. But it cannot be relegated to Hallmark days, is what I call them. You cannot let them commercialize and capitalize on the backs of Black and brown people. Shop at Black businesses, small businesses. Give them your money. Don't go to, you shouldn't be shopping at Target anyway. But stop going to Target and Amazon and Walmart and all those places to buy your Juneteenth gear. Go online and look for a Black business. Hand make them for yourself if you have to. Find out your family roots and your traditions and diligently practice them. As Muslims, you should be praying together. As Black people, you should be praying together, even if you're not Muslim. The best traditions are when you pray together, eat together, read together, travel together, teach together. If they're not teaching it in your schools, everybody was up in arms because this administration was pulling things out of the schools. We never learned them in the schools anyway. My grandmother taught us the history we needed to learn. My mother taught us. Go back. I think we got spoiled with learning Black history in schools. They're not teaching you the whole Black history anyway. They're teaching you what they want you to learn. We should be teaching. We should be passing down through the old griot oral histories. Document it. Write in some journals. Do some pictures, books. Do that. They used to learn how to, now I'm a vegan, but I'm going to say this. They used to teach, from what I understand, we used to learn how to milk the cows and grab the eggs from the chickens and all of that, and grab the berries from the trees. My brothers learned how to mow the lawn. Now we pay somebody to do it. My sons know how to pump the gas, but I see young men sitting in the car and watching their mom pump the gas. This on us. There's no way that I'm going to sit in the car, that I'm going to let my children sit in the car and I pump some gas. Ain't happening. And there's no way that I'm going to carry bags and let them walk in the house empty-handed. This on us. Our grandparents raised the animals, the cows, the pigs, the chickens. They did the corn, the tomatoes, the okra, all of that kind of stuff. Now, I'm an admitted plant killer, but I do know, I do know some things. I know some things. But I think that we can no longer just drive by people who are standing on the side of the road and splash water on them, who look like us, and just be like, oh, well. We used to travel as a family all the way across the country. Stepfather said, where we going? We used to, all of us used to, I don't know how he carried 8 people in that Lincoln, but he did. He was in it. We were in there. And we went on family trips. Get back to the church, the mosque, the temple, wherever you need to, because that's where history was taught. It wasn't just Bible study on Sundays, Saturday, Friday, whatever. That's where protests were born, protests for racism. It's where voter education was. This is where voter registration was. It's got to come back to the community. It's got to come back to the neighborhood. And last I'll say to you, we the one finger pointing, because what's the saying, brother? When you point one
If you have a
finger,
finger point, you have 3 pointing back at you. So work on improving yourself 3 times as much as accusing someone else.
that's the same. So don't keep using logic and reason and common sense, but use some intellect and sit down and talk. We've been conditioned to leave our brains somewhere else when you enter a church or a mosque or a masjid or anywhere else and you're listening. My grandmother used to say, read for yourself. Read and understand for yourself. And don't just listen to other people's words, because God didn't just speak to one person and to deliver a message to you. You don't need that intermediary. You can understand for yourself. And with that, I will say to you, stay prayerful, stay powerful, stay philanthropic, stay politically engaged. And we will see you back here, inshallah, next Monday, the 16th of June, for another wonderful episode of MAP5. And in the meantime, do something for someone without the expectation of anything in return. And in the words of mi abuela, when you change what you see will also change. Have a wonderful Monday. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy this last day of Eid and enjoy your week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. And with that,
That's a wrap.
that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Thank you for joining us.
Peace.
Pass the word,
Alhamdulillah.
let other people know that we have MAP5 on Zoom and they should join us.
Yes, let them know. And in
Yes.
2 weeks, we'll be having another movie, a short film on school to prison pipeline. 23rd. Let them know. But next week, we got a great show coming for you. Sister Max Love. That's
Voter suppression. We're gonna look at
voter suppression.
protect our vote. Protect our vote. We got to protect our vote.
Yes, we do.
We got to do it.
Okay.
All right,
All
that's a
right.
wrap.
All right.
Take us out, sis.
Walaikum salam.